Comic books started a new trend. Superman, the personification of strength and virtue, was killed, Green Lantern's indomitable will had been corrupted, and Batman's back was broken. Now in the 2020s, Robin's and John Kent's backs have been broken too, but in a much different way.
Salad, yummy, yummy.
This trend started in the mid-2010s. Let's take a quick listen to Chuck Dixon, the writer who snapped Batman's back, as he weighs in on these changes.
Diversity, inclusion, compassion, kindness in comics, Dick in comics. What are Chuck's thoughts on the tragic canceling of America, which is, the America comic book, which was, okay, and then Iceman, when Iceman had his book as a gay man. And what changes would he make to Squirrel Girl to make it bulletproof?
Well, I don't know enough about Squirrel Girl, but I have seen enough of America to know if the cancellation came because it's just an awful book. It just doesn't make any sense at all. And then Iceman being gay, hey, create your own character to be gay. I'm not against the characters being gay, but why do you got to change a character that was established as a womanizer from day one? It's like, why not make Ben Grimm a cross-dresser just for the hell of it? It's like, yeah, you can get a story out of this stuff. I mean, every year when Lucy would pull the football away from Charlie Brown, well, what if one year he killed her? It'd be a great story, but it's a story that should never be told.
Right.
I mean, it's just not a good idea just for the sake of a story. So, yeah, I mean, and the thing is, it's like, oh, Iceman's gay. It's like, is this supposed to, stop the world spinning? I mean, don't you have some other way to promote this stuff that people actually care about, like doing a good comic?
We're going to be looking at the culture war today, at the things that the left was trying to change, at the right's response, and how this is all explained really clearly by a recent Punisher miniseries. As crazy as that all may sound, it will soon make tons of sense, so buckle up and get ready. One of the frequent critiques to the changes of a character's race or sexual orientation is that comics creators should just make their own characters, which is what Nick Dragotta, the illustrator behind Absolute Batman, tried to do with American Chavez, a lesbian Hispanic superhero who has met with a lot of criticism from Comicsgate and critics from the right. It's clear many of these fans weren't just against changing characters, but mostly against the injection of left-wing politics. Let's take a quick look at one of the most controversial figures in the culture war, Captain, or as she was previously known, Miss Marvel.
And then she lost 40 pounds of muscle and half of her curves, and now she's Captain Marvel. Yay! Captain Marvel is, wine ant? I don't know. It's the thing about the costume is it's completely fine if you're teaching kids how to brush and floss. Remember, flossing's even more important. That should be her, instead of higher, further, faster, it should say flossing's even more important than brushing. And the thing, you know what the funny thing is? It actually is. There's one to grow on. And then we get the old Bendis Spider-Man, who's a complete beta. They're going to go see the president and the first lady at the time. He says, "Tell Michelle I said sup. Did you do something different with your hair?" "I'm trying a thing. It's tread carefully. I could vaporize you on a whim." "Awesome. Seriously, I love your hair. I don't want to be vaporized." Okay, so we did this little joke where it's like a bit where she's like treats him like trash and he's weirdly into it. And then we get literally the exact same. So then she's sparring with him. He said, he got a boxing thing on his head. And he keeps like saying ow and it hurts. It's fine to establish that, she's very strong, stronger than him, and it kind of establishes her power level, but it also makes her a jerk because he keeps saying it's hurting and she keeps doing it. That's a major, boxing gym faux pas. You're not actually, this isn't your enemy. You're not actually supposed to be hurting her. And then remember the joke about vaporizing him? "Be honest, what do you think of Miss Marvel?" "If I say I don't like the name, are you going to vaporize me?" "Maybe." "Then I love it."
Miss Marvel's name changed, but so did her costume. It was significantly less revealing, and Yaboyzak described it as a type of thing you'd see at the dentist, when you get a little handout telling you to floss your teeth, to fight cavities. Her physical figure was significantly altered too, as Yaboyzak said she lost her curves and 40 pounds of muscle. In terms of her physical design, there were two significant changes. Her costume was made less appealing, and then she was given masculine traits, short hair, and a reduction in the size of her curves, features which highlight her femininity. But the physical changes are just the tip of the iceberg.
Here's the problem. What would be the most lowest common denominator way to introduce Captain Marvel? Kelly Thompson had her fight a misogynist, and that's the exact same thing. She's a woman, so she's got to fight a misogynist. I always talk about why can't anyone just rob a bank? It's basically the thing. He was just robbing a museum for a precious stone from the moon. It's a pretty simple crime. I like stuff like that. But of course, like he can't stop. He's like, if it ain't Captain America's secretary, Ms. Marvel. And then he even says Mrs. Marvel instead of Ms. Oh, because that's supposed to be like a... If you're younger than 40, you don't remember the days. I mean, this is mostly a TV thing where they would say, like, whatever. What was the one? Mary Tyler Moore, like, she would walk into the newest office and they were like, hello, Mrs. I think her name was Grant on that show. Hello, Mrs. Grant. And she'd be like, it's Ms. Ms was like a big deal in the early 70s, late 70s. So she was still called Ms. until like 7 years ago. So, but he didn't put respect on her name by saying Ms. He said Mrs. Oh man, somebody really wants to be persecuted.
Her personality was altered too into that of a loudmouthed feminist. She held others in complete disregard, beating up Spider-Man just for the lulz. Just a year prior, Ethan Van Sciver was working on the Green Lantern at DC Comics. He agreed with many fans that books were becoming increasingly political and radically left-wing.
The character has his politics, and me, as somebody who disagrees with that character's politics, if I were ever to work on that character, it would be my obligation to be true to what's already been established for that character, which works for him. And then they'll also say things like, what about Watchmen? That was political. Okay, but Watchmen was also, they were brand new characters. I know they were based on the Charleston characters, or the Charlton characters, right? But they were, at the end of the day, brand new characters that were telling a particular story that Alan Moore wanted to say. And I'm not saying that comic books can't be political. This is the other thing that people keep running into. What I'm saying is that you shouldn't attach your politics to established characters that everyone owns. It makes people feel left out. It's very simple, very, very simple. And if you disagree with that, do your own thing. Don't work on these characters. Everybody feels like they have ownership over these characters. And I think that, when the main problem is that when you tell them, hey, no, these superheroes, they can't be divisive, they can't be partisan, you can't do that to them. They argue with you and they fight back, and the reason they do is because they assume that they're always going to be the beneficiaries of that. If at any point a superhero is given, politics, expressed politics, it's always going to be left-wing, and they're going to really enjoy having yet another mascot that they can flaunt. Not always the case. I mean, there are people like me who would be happy and would take great pleasure in taking one of their historical, fictional characters and adapting them to suit my own political whims, just for fun. And too bad, I could do that if I wanted to be irresponsible, if I didn't care about my job, if I didn't care about the art form that I represent, and if I didn't care about these fictional characters, which I certainly do. My job is to protect them. So I do care. I care about my job. I care about the integrity of these characters.
Many of these fans were upset with Kelly Sue DeConnick, but she didn't appreciate such criticisms.
And if you don't like my politics, don't buy my book.
Ethan Van Sciver's opinions raised many eyebrows, and some speculated that he would soon be on the chopping block, something he vehemently denied in this video.
Another discussion on Twitter about, why don't more Republicans work in comics? And is it because they're blacklisted? Is it because nobody will hire them? Is it, and those that are, like, could you be an established Republican and then find work in comics? Or, like, people have a really weird idea about how this industry works. There isn't some Illuminati, some secret cabal that runs things. There are bad actors, and I think it's been encouraging to see some of those bad actors kind of get shown the door recently. But for the most part, there's no conspiracy. Yes, you can be an out Republican, you could be an out conservative, and work in comics. If you think that there is a blacklist I mean, in comics, in the comic industry, you've been sold a bill of goods. And in a way, I almost feel like that bill of goods was sold to you by a very small group of vocal people who are trying to perpetuate a myth in order to create the feeling that people with differing points of view aren't welcome. Well, I wouldn't believe them if I were you. The truth of the matter is, what matters in comics and in all creative industries is talent.
Then, just a few months later, DC Comics, the place he called home for 2 decades, decided not to renew his contract.
And then one day, you said, "Hey, everybody, I voted for Trump," and they came after you.
Well, they knew I was a Republican. I mean, they did. I used to. I literally was the only elephant in the room all the time when I went to comic book conventions, and everybody looked at me weird. I would have friends. I would make friends with other professionals, and then I don't know. We'd spend a little time apart, and then the next time I'd see them, they'd go, "You voted for Bush?" And they'd have this look of disgust about them that I was like, yes, I'm a Republican. I voted for Bush. And then that was fine. I think the Obama years were great because, for me anyway, because I wasn't being persecuted. Nobody was worried about anything because Obama was president. They won. And Trump was a joke. I really didn't think much of Trump in 2015, but he won me over by 2016, and I was a fan. And I loved the Pepe memes. I loved all that stuff. Anyway, it was no big deal until Trump actually won. And when Trump won, I just thought, great, it's our turn. Very naive about the culture war. Wore my MAGA hat that was autographed by the president, and I took a nice picture and I tweeted it out. There was definitely like rage over this idea that somebody who was a fairly influential artist at DC Comics was a Trump supporter. But then I got a message from somebody who said, how could you do this? You voted against all of your queer comrades in comics. How do you understand that our lives are in jeopardy and you voted for that? Don't you care? And I guess I wrote back to that person and I kind of said, I guess I don't care that much about that. I guess I have other priorities in my life. Anyway, my response to that tweet or that private message got shared around to all my peers. And now everybody was furious with me because I'd basically invalidated the lives of my queer associates in comics. And then the final thing was I was persecuted. People were coming after me. I had a writer I was working with on Batman. I was doing Batman for a little while. This great guy named Greg Hurwitz. And he had a mutual friend. He had Jordan B. Peterson was his friend. And he kind of said, have you heard of this guy, Jordan Peterson? I said, yes, he's great, Well, he's seen your work. He likes it. He wants to know if you'll illustrate his upcoming book. And I was just like, well, if I do that, I'm going to get a whipping. I know it. That's going to be a big problem. I'm already on the verge of cancellation. I was terrified. My wife and I just had a baby who was diagnosed with autism. And so I needed my job. I really needed my job. But on the other hand, I had this conversation with Jordan Peterson where he said something that really impacted me. And I still think about this every single day. And it helps me step forward. It helps me take another step. He said, Ethan, I said, I'm scared. Dr. Peterson, I'm scared to illustrate your book. And he just said, Ethan, you can't let these mobbers back you into a corner. I wish I could do a Canadian accent for you. You can't let these mobbers back you into a corner. And I just thought to myself, you're damn right. You know, I'm going to illustrate your book. And so I did. I illustrated 12 Rules for Life. It turned out to be a #1 bestseller, and that was it. People were calling me a white supremacist and a Nazi and all these things that in 2017 really hurt. You didn't want to be called a Nazi. You didn't want people to think you were racist. But those are the weapons that they use against creative people and pretty much anyone that they want to destroy. In any case, DC Comics called me up. Somebody who I really liked there, a friend of the family, called me up and I said, am I okay? Is everything okay? And I could hear him pouring a drink into a little glass. I could hear the ice. And he just said, we can't renew your contract.
Wow.
And he took a big drink. And I was like, I have a child. I have a baby. I have a baby with autism. I need my job. And he said, well, you've got 4 or 5 more issues on your contract. And then that's it. You've got time to find other work, you know?
Let's go back to his previous criticisms of comics progressively becoming more feminist and left-wing.
Did you notice in the industry, before your cancellation, an encroaching wokeness, cult-like mentality, stuff like that?
Yeah. But I didn't understand what it was. A lot of strange women. I hate to put it this way. Sorry, ladies. A lot of strange women kind of suddenly showed up in the comic book business and basically came at us with this criticism that this was clearly a boys' club. It was unsafe for women, and everything that you guys are putting out is sexist, and it's racist, and it's homophobic. And, well, we're going to fix that. If you hire us, and you should hire us, we're going to fix that. Because if you don't hire us, you're sexist. So suddenly all of these women show up, and they start basically making changes to this sort of male-dominated hobby. This is a male-driven culture. Obviously it is. These power fantasies are mostly for boys. But they started to make these changes. The women, suddenly, who used to be beautiful and curvaceous, we used to be able to glorify and exaggerate the female form. Suddenly, we had to cover them up. Breasts became smaller and smaller until they were just sort of pecs. There was actually a weird phenomenon called the uni-pec, which was just one breast with like a stretched cloth over it because you didn't even want to define breasts in any way in superheroes. And basically everybody got scared.
When you want to appeal to women, then the guys maybe are not getting appealed to. Like, you can't appeal to both, I would think. You might be able to.
It's even weirder than that. Lego did a study, which I always cite, and this is amazing. I don't think anybody's thought of it this way, but Lego was wondering why girls don't play with Lego toys. They're boys, but they're not really gender-based. They're just bricks. So why are little boys playing with Legos, but girls aren't? Why is that? So they got a study together. They got 2,500 kids, 1,250 boys, 1,250 girls, and their parents. And they put Lego figurines, let's just say a Batman Lego set, in front of these kids. And they just studied how these boys and girls played with their Lego toys to try to figure out what the missing problem was. What's the missing piece? Well, the boys pick up a little Batman figurine, and they become Batman. That's the whole thing. They take on those traits. They imagine they're Batman, and that's how boys fantasize. That's how boys play. Meanwhile, the little girls pick up Batman, and Batman becomes them. They project themselves onto Batman, and suddenly Batman is acting like they are.
Wow.
Which is why Barbie is so popular. What's Barbie's personality? Who's Barbie? She's whoever the little girl who's playing with Barbie is.
We were just talking about that yesterday. Boys pretend that they are He-Man and girls pretend that Barbie is them.
That's right.
Yeah.
Ethan points out several issues here. First, that female character designs were made more masculine. 2, that their costumes were less sexy. and 3, that the books were seen as a vehicle for self-insert, rather than a means to tell the story from the character's established perspective. Oftentimes, these first 2 points are related to the third, as female artists and writers may feel self-conscious about their behavior and physical appearance in comparison to these stunning characters. These changes were put into effect by left-wing activists. The right's response has been to crowdfund original comics. The rest of this video is going to analyze the right's factions in the culture war, but in order to better understand the culture war, we're going to visit Get Fury, a Punisher miniseries by Garth Ennis and Jason Burrows. As crazy as this all sounds, this comic perfectly explains the culture war. Now, I'm not going to give you a full review here, but if you'd like to hear that, wait for my playlist which breaks down each issue one at a time. Before we go into Get Fury, make sure to smash the like button and hit subscribe for more videos about the culture war, comics, Star Wars, and all types of nerdy things. The comic tells the story of Nick Fury, a key intelligence operative, who crashes deep into enemy territory. He possesses enough knowledge that the enemy could use him to topple the American war effort in Burma. Head intelligence operatives realize it's too dangerous to let Nick Fury fall into enemy hands, and that an extraction would be too risky, and that they'd better kill him before he can be used against them. Of course, such a task would require a very special individual, someone capable of penetrating enemy territory without being detected, then execute Fury from a great distance. The only person they trusted with such a job was Frank Castle, the man we'd later come to know as the Punisher. This mission was already quite calloused. Top American officials were sending one of their best on a suicide mission to kill a key asset. Sun Tzu says that if you treat your men like your sons, they will follow you into the pit of hell. But these commanding officers viewed their men like pawns, assets to be disposed of at their whims. But as the story progresses, we learn that their intentions are even darker. Nick Fury discovered blatant corruption. Gay CIA agents were paying off the Viet Cong to stop fighting them, to make it seem like they were victorious in their efforts. And they were even using them to smuggle drugs, and then hiding them inside the bodies of GIs. Fury ended up killing these CIA agents and discarding their bodies in a local brothel, making it look like they were murdered by a local thief. The only problem was that these CIA agents were homosexuals, and they would never frequent such an establishment. In other words, these commanding officers came to the conclusion that Nick orchestrated their murders. In the meantime, Frank tries infiltrating Saigon, pretending to be a Russian intelligence officer. He doesn't fit in and eventually is discovered by Phuong and her daughter Bian. Phuong offers to help Frank and wonders why he can trust her. She explains that she is Nick Fury's mistress, and that Bian is Nick's daughter as well. The shocking revelation leads Frank to join forces with this desperate mother, who is trying to find a better life for her daughter and earn American citizenship. Their story grows even more tragic when you learn about how Phuong was left barefoot and pregnant, after Nick disappeared without warning, and her parents were beheaded for aiding the French forces. This left her no choice but to quickly shack up with an elite communist official and keep her nose down. The story then becomes a sort of old lady swallows a fly type scenario, as they now have to send another team of elite soldiers to kill not only Nick, but also Frank. Meanwhile, Frank busts Nick out of prison with the help of Phuong, Nick's former mistress and their daughter Bian. Nick is totally unresponsive. His severe torture prevents him from speaking or understanding his surroundings. He doesn't realize that he's with his former lover, or his daughter he never knew. But back at base, the American officials realized that Nick and Frank Castle weren't going to expose them, but that they had killed the gay CIA officers to tie up loose ends. In other words, Nick and Frank were actually covering for their commanding officers. But it was too late to call off the death squad, and when they saw Fury and Frank, they opened fire. While Nick and Frank were lucky enough to survive, his daughter and mistress weren't. Nick asks Frank who they were, and to his horror, Frank wouldn't respond, leaving him to introspectively discover the truth. This story is a perfect analogy for the comic book culture war. People like Phuong, Nick's mistress, represent artists who love their craft and great art, but they feel that enemy political forces are threatening their medium, so they ally themselves with certain cultural political commentators, thinking that they are on the same side, and Phuong's daughter, of course, represents fans of these artists and the medium in general who share similar views. And in this scenario, Fury and Frank are political activists, to gain further victories in the culture war. At times, these two factions may have similar goals, but ultimately they're still fighting separate wars. Phuong and Bian were used as pawns by these political activists. Unfortunately for them, they ended up getting caught in the crossfire. And aside from these political activists, there is another faction too. And then there are other people who get involved in the culture war not because they actually believe in the fight, but because they see it as a means to get more money and extend their power. This is comparable to the gay CIA agents who were working besides the communist forces, paying them off to fake victories, but also using them to smuggle heroin in the corpses of GIs. Similarly, in the culture war, there are people who don't even care about political ideology. They are simply war profiteers in search of power and wealth, and they are willing to dispose of anyone to accomplish these goals. Your boy Zach talked about this recently. He referred to such people as war profiteers. Let me show you what he had to say.
It would be nice if comics was about reading comics, not just about buying books as cultural war bonds in your culture war, which never ends. But somehow you're always winning it, but it never ends. That sounds like something that like a war profiteer would like, not somebody who is an actual, soldier. So I mean, just some guy who was talking about it. He was like, the left demands books that they don't buy. The right buys books that they don't read. So it is not an ideal situation if you want people to read your stories right now.
Zach's points about not reading books and political war bonds reminded me of a fascinating exchange in the summer of 2023. Dick Masterson claimed that people only liked Eric July's books because of his politics, and that his book Isom wasn't compelling. Nina Infinity argued in Eric's favor, asking if Dick even read the book, to which he responded,
Yes.
Okay, I'll read it and then
Why
give
not?
you a proper review
Please
of
do
Eric
it. I would
July's
love
fucking
that.
black superhero with a crucifix on his dick. I'm sure
Do
it's
it.
fucking great.
Do it. Then you would have a valid opinion, though. 'cause
No,
then
I
you've read
actually,
it.
this opinion is perfectly valid. It looks like a
How?
scam. How is it valid?
Yeah.
What's good about it? What's his superpower? What's his slogan? Give me the log line.
I don't know. I haven't
Give me
read
the commercial. Come on. Other than we're taking down the establishment, how is it good?
I
Sell
don't
it,
know. I haven't
Nina.
read it,
Sell it.
so I can't. I don't have an opinion about it, whether it's good or not. I just don't think that someone who hasn't read it should be like, oh, it's shit, because you should usually watch something or read something if you're gonna talk shit about it.
As it turns out, Nina, one of Eric's defenders, hadn't even read it herself. This sparked a debate which culminated into a fiery interchange on Yellow Flash's show. Here Ethan argued that Dick was right about Eric's book being flawed.
I think a lot of those notes were accurate. I read it. I might be the only one here who actually read the book when I got it. Why didn't anybody read this?
Though it's important to note he also defended Eric as well.
I read it. It was good.
That's
It was a
good.
good start.
That's good. I'm glad you enjoyed it. My point was, this is why the story is not good.
Dick, the problem is that you attacked his business first.
Yeah.
And that's why he's not listening to you. The reason why he's not receptive to what you have to say is because you attacked his business first and foremost, and then you went ahead and gave your notes about the book. And so he's mad because you called him a scammer, and you attacked the woke thing, and you do that, and you're going to shut somebody down, and they're not going to listen to you, and that's why he's not receptive to your notes at all, and doesn't give a shit what you have to say. And that's the situation that we find ourselves in right now. So he doesn't want to hear you. And that's,
I understand, and I thank you for letting me on.
Eric still wasn't too happy.
I heard you talking, Ethan, about this whole like this guy in his review or criticism was excellent. That's bullshit.
Yellow Flash attempted to defend Eric, as Dick said Isom's powers weren't clear.
Just off of the book alone, you can assume he has some kind of enhanced strength and like flight.
Eric later said the following.
Explicitly says it in the book.
Yeah.
He explicitly says it.
Flash, did
he
you
goes
read
through
it?
the internal dialogue.
He literally says in the book
So
that
see,
he
this is
doesn't
what I'm
lie.
talking about with you not being in good faith, because you can't get fundamental things correct. Because you're so mad at you, so for whatever reason, angry at myself and the success it is that we saw, and you're just shitting on people's friends and customers and all, and going on about this other stuff. And you can't even get fundamental thing wrong. He specifically goes through internal dialogue about him not being able to fly. You claim to have read the book and you couldn't even.
I didn't think he could fly until Flash said he could fly.
It is clear that not only Nina, but Flash didn't read the book. And it raises a question. Was Isom really a story, or is it just political war bonds? Thanks for watching and have a great rest of your day. Don't forget to like and subscribe, or...
You are a hoe ass